Hey, what's going on, everyone? You're watching myNewYorkeye, and this is Brian Hernandez. And today we're interviewing Sam. I'm going to make sure I get your name right.
Zeiger.
Sam Zeiger. Okay, so I just had my first floating experience.
Yeah. How was it?
It was great. I felt it was really relaxing. I think earlier you talked about how you probably shouldn't think about it too much, as far as like you might have read other things.
Right.
Maybe I've read my own, done my own research and read some things. So yeah, maybe I was expecting something kind of crazy or over the top.
It's almost unavoidable the first time coming. So obviously something attracts you to coming here. Something attracts you to wanting to do this. So whatever that is you're looking for, you're expecting, it's just part of the deal. So it's not something you could really avoid, but in my orientation I said to just as best as you can to put it aside, not to say that you can successfully eliminate it.
Right. Well, how did you find yourself in the position of running a sleep tank, an isolation tank?
Well, I had a great interest in this sort of thing back in the 1980s when it was a lot more popular than it is today. Actually, today it's having a resurgence, but back in the 80s, floating was around much more so than it is today. I floated in a number of places in the city. I loved it pretty much from the start, and bought my own float tank. So my reason was totally personal. It was not like I was buying a tank to get into the float tank business. And as the places started disappearing one by one, and people were coming here, it just kind of happened that I might as well charge a nominal amount for people to come, and pretty soon it became a business. So it was not really an intention, and when I started to do it as a business, it was more whimsical. It was not something that I did thinking, wow, I'll do this for the next 27 years. I did it thinking, until I figure out where I'm going from here, I'll do this for now.
So is this now the only isolation tank in New York City?
There's another, there's a day spa that has another float tank. But yeah, I mean, this is the only pure flotation tank place. This is basically all I do. So currently it is, unfortunately. The psyche of people these days, just to turn more inward, to just look at the proliferation of yoga centers and meditation places and all this kind of thing is really so much more than it's been in the past, and the availability of this information that was once very esoteric and very secretly guarded is now available with the click of a mouse on the internet. So we live in very different times, and I think due to the extreme conditions, especially in a city like New York, where people are flooded with continual bombardment of sensory input, overload of sensory input. I consider New York to be like an assault, just walking in the street. It's just not even walking in the street. I mean, it starts from the moment you get up pretty much. So the need for this, I think, is great because it's a perfect balance or counteraction of the overwhelming stimulation that people experience in their lives. And basically what it helps to do is bring people back to more of a state of balance within themselves, so they can actually remember what it is fundamentally that they are inside, and not to be so caught up in the role playing and the rat race and the labyrinth of life, and just to actually take a look at where is my life. It's an hour of opportunity to be intimate with myself, to become much more available to your where you are in your life at this time without that constant bombardment of input or the distractions of the everyday world. So even if a person has that intention, if a person intends to meditate, it's very difficult to disengage the mind when the phone is ringing and people are always looking at their phones and text messaging and all the noise, and the living conditions might be such that other people are there. And it's just very, very difficult to disengage and to just have that time to just turn inward. So very often people have the intention, but they're unable to actually do it because of just the situation of their lives and the habit of their mind. So the float tank kind of enforces that period of time. Now, an hour is the usual amount of time people spend, but I have clients that float as long as 3 hours of time, even longer, but regular clients that do it for 3 hours at a time, because it really gives you a chance to go deeper inside of yourself. First of all, to restore the body's energies, which is constantly depleted in our way of living, and to kind of take stock in what's going on inside, what is happening in your life at this time. Very often people come with notions like, you have whatever notions you had about what the experience is going to be like, and get something very, very different. I had a woman just the other day who had all these ideas of coming and really having this blissful, wonderful opening experience, and the day she came, she was having a big drama with her work, with some of the person that works there, and all the people at her work were involved in this drama. And so basically her experience was processing a lot of that, and it wasn't the blissful opening, wonderful experience that she expected. But it was necessary to see what it was, first of all, that is obscuring that experience, and all the things have to be looked at and seen through, basically, in order to experience that natural state of bliss and openness that we all are fundamentally. So each time you float, just as when you meditate, it's going to be something different. It's going to be something which is there for you at that time. The orientation I emphasize would be the body. The body is so important because it's so neglected in our overly mental culture, and very often when people actually spend time sensing into the body, there's a whole opening of all the issues that we've been avoiding and pushing in and not really dealing with. And so when the body relaxes, sometimes these issues will surface. Other times there is a sense of blissfulness that just comes from attending to the body, of being aware of the wonderful gift that these bodies are. So it's an opportunity to stop for a little bit, to go inside, to take inventory of what's happening in your body.
So there's no, if I were to ask, what could you expect for one's first experience, there's no single thing?
No, because first of all, how would I know what a person is going to experience? And how would you know? Because life is just this mystery. It's this constant unfoldment that is happening at all times. And nice to, sometimes we get what we expect, but the usual case is something surprising, something different. Now, sometimes the bliss and the openness and that stuff that everyone is looking for happens just spontaneously. It just comes up, and very often it can happen on the first floor. It's wonderful when it does, but the truth is there's nothing fundamentally better about that than seeing all the other things, because eventually, all of it has to be seen and worked through, and explored, and so I don't rate one float as good and another float as not good. It's all whatever it is, and that's it.
What sorts of clients do you get here as far as professions or types of people?
It's the gamut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, there is no profile. This is New York.
Right.
So I have one very famous actor who floats here regularly. He'll be here actually tomorrow. I have people that are in Wall Street, lots of stressed out, business people. When I say stressed out, I mean most people are stressed out no matter what they do. So stress is something endemic to these times that we live in. But in terms of the profile of who floats, I have these days lots of young people. It kind of make me feel really old because, I mean, the truth is, I have people from all over the world that come. I just got an email, I exchanged emails with a woman who was to me once before in 2009, and she's coming from Brazil. And so I have people from Brazil. I just had two people recently who didn't know each other from Shanghai. One is an architect, one is a journalist. So it's every student's, everything you can think of. I've had New York City policemen, construction workers. So not, these are just the roles that we play in life. Right. So for me, all of that is insignificant. I don't even think of it. Lots of creative people, lots of artists, dancers, even bodybuilders, people that have more of a physical orientation to doing it. Lots of kickboxers and martial artists. I just had a guy who owns some martial arts studios in New York here for his first float. So yeah, it's the gamut, everything you can think of.
And I think you touched on this before, but how could floating sort of supplement a type of spiritual path or anything like
Well,
that?
everything that I just said about what it can do will supplement any spiritual path. First of all, spiritual path, I don't separate that from how we live our lives. Basically, everything we do day to day is part of that path. What's spiritual? So, if a person does do inner work, if a person is, for instance, meditating, floating tends to bring you back to that depth. And first of all, it shows you what is possible by eliminating all the sensory input, eliminating the effects of gravity, allowing you to go into that deep space rather effortlessly, and showing you what it is like to feel that sense of lightness, clarity. When I come out of a float, I feel like the world is put into sharp focus. I feel light, balanced, clear. Everything. Now that's all part of the spiritual path. If you live your life that way, going into samadhi and meditation becomes relatively easy. If your mind is that clear, I mean, it's basically going in there, very often you get rid of the debris of the mind because there's no stimulus, so the mind empties out, and then you have this open space, and when you come out, you tend to remain in that open space. So being relaxed is probably the best thing you can do for a person, spiritually and practically.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so
Okay.
much for taking
My
the
pleasure.
time.
My pleasure.
And you're all watching myNewYorkeye, and I'm Brian Hernandez. Thanks.